Hello, comrades. It's Jared here at Brew Republic, and today I'm with Greg Pilley from Stroud Brewery, our featured brewer for March. Greg, how are you?
I'm good. It's a
Fantastic.
lovely sunny Monday morning.
Absolutely. The long week ahead. So just launch right into it. One question I ask every brewer is their roundabout way of getting to where they are. It's always an interesting story to find out how people came to own a brewery. So that's my question to you. How'd you end up starting Stroud? What brought you there?
Sure. Well, I think many brewers all start at home, keen home brewers. I started brewing when I was at university, trying to get, cheap supply of decent beer. Actually, the challenge was making it decent. And when I left, I spent some time on a farm working off my debts and had the benefit of a cottage in the middle of nowhere, which was great for parties. So that's when I started getting into full mash brewing beer, and that really stepped up the game. But then I actually worked overseas traveling. I graduated in marine biology, and then I worked as a project manager in a conservation project in the north of Nigeria for 3 years. And then following that, sort of not really knowing what I wanted to do, I actually managed to get some sponsorship off Guinness and spent the next 4 years researching the traditional alcoholic beverages of Africa. And the reason that I did that was because I'd had this life-changing experience in Nigeria, came home, and people's perceptions of Africa are quite narrow. It's
Yeah.
famine, it's disaster, it's corruption. But my experience around the place I was working is that people live everyday lives. They have families, they grow food, they celebrate birth, life, death, and most of the time that was with booze, and that beer was, exactly the same sort of things that we all do. And I wanted to reflect that diversity of life in Africa through the window of beer and alcoholic beverages, because that's something we all relate to. So the sort of social context of drinking has always been very much at the heart of sort of my experience. And I actually grew up overseas. My dad was an engineer. We traveled all over the world. And in an expat life, again, the barbecue and beer is very central to that. So I was, very much brought up that. When I came back to England, I ended up working with the Soil Association, which is an organisation that promotes organic food and farming. And my work was specifically in their local food team. So I was promoting community-based local food enterprise. So I was advising small community groups on setting up local food businesses. I had this background and interest in beer. And when I finally settled in Stroud, I felt quite suddenly domesticated, and I needed something to engage me. And I needed a bigger shed than the one I had.
Right.
And that's when I decided it was time to bite the bullet and start up my own business. So that's how Stroud Brewery came about. And we
Wow.
brewed our first beer in May 2006, and that beer was our budding pale ale.
Very nice. I had budding last night. Fantastic. I love it. Great pale ale. I see why it's the flagship. It's fantastic.
Thank
Wow. That's a good one. That's one of the top ones I've heard.
you.
Well, it's so interesting how it informs, everywhere you travel. I think that's a common story with all of our brewers. Rarely is it, I grew up in a hometown, I never moved, I never did anything, I started a brewery. It's usually the inflection from different communities and cultures and different ways of brewing, different tastes that kind of create your unique brand. So I think it's all the better for it.
Yeah.
I would say, when I have Stroud beer, I feel it's pretty much right on to the kind of the tagline for the brewery. I feel it's very classic focused, but there's definitely a bit of a modern twist, a nod to some more modern ingredients and modern hopping. So kind of what's your ethos and what's your brewing style mixed in with kind of balancing that with sustainability?
Sure. So, with my background in ecology and local food, that sort of sustainability has been at the core of our business decision making from the start. And of course, I suppose that's now evolved, and we've now pinned down our mission statement to brewing outstanding beer without damaging the planet and bringing people together to inspire positive change. So that's that sort of encompasses where we're at. In terms of the beer, we started out in 2006 when pubs weren't even selling local beer. It was a
Right.
challenge to even get local beer into a pub. And that's where we started, was brewing great beer to sell to local pubs, of which the Cotswolds got many. 2008 saw the first recession, and that's when pubs realized that there was support for local businesses and great local artisan produced beers. And that's when we see the upsurge in beers across the UK, and that wave of microbreweries really took off. Alongside that, the craft beer movement threw out the style sheet. So that freed up brewers. We weren't stuck to styles anymore. There was a continuum of taste that you could achieve with our ingredients. And we took that as well. That freed up our brewers, and we started brewing beers of all sorts, that didn't fit the usual style. So, the black IPAs, that oxymoron, but we still have fun with it. So we brew all styles of beer. As an organic brewery, we became a dedicated organic brewery now 3-4 years ago. That does restrict our ingredients, and particularly our hops. There's a limited range of organic hops, and it's really, really hard to grow organic hops. They're very resistant very susceptible, I should say, to disease, especially fungus. And hop farmers really rely on a great deal of spray, herbicide and fungicide, in order to achieve that. So, we rely on resistant varieties and a smaller amount of hop available to our palate. So to sort of counteract that, we've had fun with all sorts of other botanicals. We have elderflower in a beer. Brewers have used spices and things in beers for a long time. In fact, original beers were entirely spiced, no hops at all. Hop was just one of those many spices.
Yeah.
So I think, it's not unusual for a brewery, but we've really had some fun doing that. So it's about traditional beers. The basis of those beers is malt. And again, since our start, we championed local farmers. We managed to get malt grown on the Cotswolds, and that was enabled because our maltster, Warminster Maltings, which is one of now only 2 traditional floor maltings, they actually acquire the barley from the farm, they malt it, they send it to us. So they have control of the supply chain, and we know the provenance of that grain. So still, the majority of our malt is off the Cotswolds. Floor malted barley is not perfect. It's not an industrial process. And in that imperfection, actually, it produces a very characterful malt.
Exactly.
And also it doesn't attenuate. There's still unconverted sugars and complex sugars that remain. That gives the beer a bit more body, a bit more sweetness. And that means we can pack in more bitterness and more hop without disturbing the balance of that beer. So I would say our beers are sort of, the foundation of our beer is a malty character, which allows us to put in the most of our organic bittering hops, plus a twist of something unusual that we use to augment those bittering hops.
Yeah, I'd say that sounds about right from everything I've had from you. I mean, these, you look at these things, some of these things are seen as restrictions in some way, but at the same time, those things sometimes make something that wouldn't have come to be if you just had the pick of the litter, everything's easy, everything's available. It kind of forces you into being a bit more creative, and sometimes all the better for it. And Great British floor malting, obviously world renowned, and to have something that local, that's a beautiful thing. That's really incredible. Yeah. And then the last thing I have for you, and this is something that I wasn't even familiar with until we brought you guys in for March, but in looking into Stroud, I saw the certified B Corp. And in looking into it, that's an exclusive club. Can you tell us more about what you have to do to be a certified B Corporation?
Sure. Certainly it has been very exclusive, but now this last year it's really growing quite fast. And why did we do that? We were doing all sorts of good things, but we didn't really have a handle and measure of how well we were doing. And certainly we weren't translating that to our customers. We're doing good things, but nobody was really hearing about it. So B Corp is an accreditation, and what it does, it measures your social and environmental performance as well as your profitability. So it looks at the business as a whole. It's a very holistic measure, and it looks at things like your staff welfare, impact on environment, governance of a business, you know, who owns, who manages, where do the profits go. It looks at your relationships with suppliers, and it looks at your relationships with customers. It looks at your trading distances, you know, how far you trade with local or whatever. It's basically looking at your impact as a whole on planet and society. And there's not very many accreditations that do it. And it's now gaining traction. I mean, just last month, Brewdog managed to gain its accreditation as a B Corp. And there's other big companies like Patagonia, Innocent Drinks, Danone. They've all become B Corp as well. So it's really, certainly the knowledge of it within businesses is growing very rapidly. And I think this year, B Corps are trying to do a good job of trying to promote it to consumers as well, to recognize the value. To the extent that Waitrose and Ocado now have a dedicated B Corp virtual aisle. So you can go onto their website and get a B Corp aisle. So I think we will see more of it. And not just B Corp. I think everybody recognizes that we've got to reduce our individual impacts. How do we do that? It's about the choices we make with our spending.
Yeah.
And really, that's our message. You know, if one wants a different world, then you've got to put your money and support the businesses that are doing things differently. You know, don't just do the same old thing. You know, go and spend it on the businesses that are doing differently, and that way we make an incremental change.
Absolutely. Well, it's incredibly admirable, and to be able to do something like that and still put out amazing beer with zero handicap, it's fantastic stuff. I love it. And I can't wait to get down to your pub and garden and sink a few pints of cask. I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, look forward to showing you around.
That's great. Greg, thanks for making time this morning, and I'll let you get back to brewing.
No worries. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Cheers.